Happy snowy Tuesday, everyone. If you are in Chicago, it is a snow day around here. Not really terrible where I am, but the schools, since they're so used to being remote, decided to go remote anyway. So if you hear some trumpeting or drumming going on in the background, my kids are technically in jazz band right now, and there might be a little bit of competition. But that's how we roll, right? So welcome, everyone. If you are just now finding this, I am Allison Henderson. My company, as you see there, is Moving Image Consulting, and we talk about body language and how it is connected to the brain and how we use that connection to build our businesses. And today's topic is all about momentum. I don't know about you, but the start to 2021 has just been this roller coaster of highs and lows. We were ready to get rid of 2020, and then 2021 kind of slammed in with a whole new set of interesting circumstances in the last few weeks that really left me quite distracted. I, in some ways, feel like we kind of lost January as well, or that holiday just creeped into the beginning of January. So let me know if you're here. Hey, Gary, nice to see you. Thanks for commenting. Super great to see you here. And so I'm curious as to how you guys have felt. I know Inauguration Day was a particular high for me, that we felt like that President Biden's inaugural speech was very much about trust and unity, and there was kind of a calmness that came about, and that sort of speaks to our first LinkedIn Live, which was about trust, and then his purpose, which was last week's LinkedIn Live. His purpose is to bring unity to the nation. And then that fantastic poem, oh my gosh, Amanda Gorman, just love her. And it just kind of then kept that momentum going all the way through till the evening broadcast of about, all these different Americans that they were showcasing, the fantastic music. So we're kind of on that high, and we certainly want that momentum to continue, both for the nation, and if it brought you a little bit of momentum and feeling of moving on for you and your business. And I always promise a little bit of science, a little bit of brain stuff with our talks. And so this week we're talking about a study that revolves around something that is called psychological momentum. And there were, of course, scientists, Iso Ahola and Dotson, who looked at the brain and kind of how momentum occurs psychologically. And they found some really interesting things. First of all, they looked at what underpins momentum, and it's confidence. And as you know, I spent a lot of time talking about confidence and how you use your body to bring some more confidence to your presentations and to yourself with things like sales calls, shall we say. And I think it's interesting too. That's great. So there's this confidence piece which builds on to, and you need to have perceived competence. So you have to believe that you can do it. You can't just have confidence in something, but you have to feel like you have the skills. Because the third thing was internal ability or skills. You had to feel like you had these skills to do whatever it is in order to build momentum psychologically. And then what I found really cool was that during their study, they discovered that this idea of psychological momentum begins consciously, but then it quickly moves into an unconscious automatic execution of human behavior and performance. So one of the things that we have to really think about is this, okay, we start it with a conscious, I'm building momentum. I have the confidence and the competence and the skill set to do this. But once it becomes subconscious, that I think is where the body can really keep us charged and keep us going, because our body language is also subconscious and is nonverbal. So we're going to look at today combining those two things, the subconscious that's going on in the mind and the subconscious that's going on in the body. Good morning, Anna. Nice to see you here as well. So that's the kind of the brain part. And the last little thing from the study, I'm going to go ahead and go there. I know some people were saying that I spent too much time on the science last week, but the other thing about this science is that they have found that the initial success is a really critical factor in continuing to have momentum. And I think we see that all the time. It makes absolute sense to me. This is why you really want to set yourself up for success, and you want to set your teams up for success so that they feel that initial momentum, and that keeps us going. The example that I immediately went to was selling products. Back when you were a kid, how many of you had to go door to door and sell something for your PTA? So yeah, exactly. No more science. So I bet you had to go door to door and sell something, or at least feel like you were bugging your neighbors and your grandparents and everybody to buy something. For me, for years it was wrapping paper, and sometimes it was those buckets of cookies, the cookie dough that you just scoop out and you go door to door. Well, I hated that idea. My parents were both teachers, so there was no way they could take my form with them to work and kind of guilt their buddies into buying, because everybody buys everybody else's stuff. I know that's really kind of taboo today, but I believe back in the 80s, this was kind of common practice. And so I always felt like I was that child that didn't have that advantage of having my parents go sell for me. And once you get those couple neighbors to say yes, that's why your parents always sent you out to those neighbors first, because they're more likely to say yes. You had a little bit of momentum to maybe go out to the people that you didn't know. And that is really how I had to do it, because even today, those sales calls, right? I mean, and reach outs and all of that kind of stuff. If the first couple people that you call that day answer the phone, it's like, all right, you can do this. And you tend to make, at least I do, I tend to make more calls on the days when people answer than I do on the days where I either get downright no's or I'm too busy, or straight to voicemail. Sometimes voicemail is easy. You can crank through because they're not going to pick up anyway, and I could just leave a message. But that momentum, that's just where I struggle in my business is with the sales part. And so I have to really use the things that I'm going to teach you today about body language to gear up. I know I've talked a lot about that 1,000-pound phone and what you can do to give yourself more confidence when you are making those calls. But what I want to focus on today is something that you've probably never seen before, and that is position of the body and how that connects to the brain. Good morning, Corinne. Nice to see you here as well. Did I say show your? There you go. There she is. So first of all, I just want you to make sure before you use these techniques with your body that you believe that what you need to do, the task that you are heading into, is really what you should be doing. If you don't believe it in your brain to start with, that this is really helping your business, and we get bombarded with advice, right? From very well-intentioned advisors, either coaches that we hire, and so we maybe feel a little bit more obligated to do what they're telling us to do because, after all, we paid for it, and family and friends and colleagues. But you have to get in that mindset piece first, that this is really what I should be doing to build momentum in my business. Because if you don't believe it, then really the body language piece isn't necessarily going to help. And it may be that it's just sort of a how you do it or how you're looking at it is something that needs to shift in order to really believe in it. And remember that confidence that you need to have for that psychological momentum from the science study? You have to have confidence that this is really a good thing to be doing, because if you feel like you're wasting your time, the body language piece isn't necessarily going to help. Okay, so you have confidence. You feel like this is definitely a task that you should be doing to build momentum for you or your team. And if it's something that you've been tasked to do by a manager, there may be a different way to do it that you could bring up to your manager and say, well, what if I accomplish that by doing it slightly differently? And that might help you with that mindset or getting over some of those obstacles. But body-wise, here's one thing that you can do. I'm going to give you two different things. The sagittal plane of the body, okay? This is the forward and backward movement. It's like you have a bar going through at the waist, and the only way you can go is circular. Okay, so the sagittal plane is also called the wheel plane. It is something that, thanks, Gary. It's like those lawn ornaments that you see outside that just do this, right? When they get going in the wind and they just go down and up and down and up and down and up, okay? That is the sagittal plane of the body. And this is where you can build momentum. You literally can feel it. Now, all of you that can't, nobody else is on screen with me. This isn't a Zoom call. This is a live. So you can practice it yourself. You can feel yourself kind of going up and over almost. And it's like, and there's this forward momentum. This is where the lean in comes in sales, that feeling of leaning in. So that's one thing that you can do when you pick up that phone. You can kind of literally lean into the conversation. That will help you build the momentum and keep it going. And then when they pick up, usually what I do is as I lean back a little bit, like, I've got this. I am absolutely the person for this job or this product and service that I'm offering to them. I am in a place of service, and I'm saying hello, and I'm telling them about something new that they could consider for their teams. So right now it's my Beyond the Box program, which is taking you from, I should probably put a little commercial in here. It's taking you from Zoom world into in-person. And that blend that everybody's going to have when we go back to this kind of hybrid with half the people at home and half the people in the office. How do we navigate that? And so that's the new training that I have to offer. But when I'm communicating to people that I know that very well might be interested, I can lean back and say, okay, I've got this. And then when I think, oh, maybe they're interested, that I can lean forward again. And that keeps me going in the conversation, keeps my personal momentum going. If you're on a call where folks can see you, it's okay to lean in every once in a while. It shows that you're alive, puts you in 3 dimensions, and it also helps signal to the other person that we're in this. And if they start to lean in as well, that's great. Sagittal is what you want to see, particularly for buy-in and for sales and things like that. The other thing that I want you to do is think about not only the sagittal, but I want you to think about the diagonal. Okay, the diagonals, when it comes to body movement, they are less stable than things that are based on our symmetry. So when you go off of this forward and backwards, it's pretty stable. It feels kind of good. It takes more to knock you over if you're standing on 2 feet and you're just leaning forwards and back. Think about sports, right? When baseball players are up to bat and they're leaning over, they're still pretty stable. You'd have to hit them pretty hard to knock them over. The same thing with football, right? We're getting ready for the Super Bowl, and those guys, they're on their toes, they're wide, they're leaning forward, and when they go at each other, they're definitely leaning in towards each other because that's giving them more power. So that has power and stability. What they're not doing is they're not going off on 1 foot in the diagonal, because that is less stable. These diagonals are less stable, but they are great for freedom and mobility. And that idea of freedom and giving yourself that momentum. So you notice what I'm doing here. I'm literally following in kind of a sway up this diagonal turn. I could do it the other way too. Watch, right? There's more diagonals than that. You could start backwards, go backwards and then forwards. But if you really need to get yourself moving, this is something that you can do before you go into a meeting. It's something you can do before you go into a physical sales meeting. You could sit in your car for a second and put yourself on that diagonal. You go into a bathroom stall, just like Amy Cuddy told us, right? Go into a bathroom stall and do this. You can hide from people. You don't necessarily want them to see you doing it, but that idea of momentum, it's getting you juiced and putting your body in this feeling of freedom and swing that will get you going in an even bigger way because of that it's a little bit less stable, which for me can help in those times where I feel a little less sure anyway. It's like, it's okay. I haven't fallen over. I still can control it. I still will be okay. Even if I go off into this unknown direction, I still have the confidence to come out okay. That might be a little different than you've ever heard before. I bet you've never had a body language person encourage you to swing, on the diagonals. But I want you to try it. See if it feels better. If it's a little happier, honestly, because of that swing. It connects into some childhood thing or something, right? So that's the swing and the sway. If that's too much for you, I will put in that Inc. magazine talked about momentum and visualization. You see this a lot when we're in the Olympics, those Olympians visualizing going down the ski slope or doing their routine on the balance beam and then standing on the podium at the end because they know that they're going in then with more confidence because they visualized the whole thing. This definitely works, and they've done a lot of studies, right, where your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy. And if you visualize it, if you think it, you can do it kind of idea. Therefore, I want you to do visualizations before you go off too, but I don't want you to only visualize it. I want you to move it as you visualize it. I want you to put it in your body. Figure out a moment in your life. Doesn't have to be connected to your business, but where you felt really, really great. For me, there are some times when I was at the end of my senior recital in college, and you spent all this time and you put together these musical numbers. I was a music theater major. Well, I was a theater major with music minor, so I did a music theater recital, and you brought your friends together and you all performed, but it was basically a showcase for you, right? It's all your friends and family in the audience. So at the end, when it's all over and you're bowing, there's just this wash of gratitude and confidence and all sorts of really fantastic things. Thanks, Gary. I'm glad you're still here. And so I could think of that moment, but when I think of that moment, I don't want to just I don't want to just remember it. I want to then actually put my physical presence in that moment. One of the other moments that's more recent, when I did my TED Talk, the TEDx in Wrigleyville in June, right during the protests and all that was happening, and the COVID was rampant, and we had to film individually, no audience, no nothing. And it was kind of surreal because we stood in an empty Wrigley Field. And throughout, they were doing construction across the street. And there was all this, during my particular 10-minute time slot, there was all this hammering and sawing going on. And it was super hard to concentrate. I was like, oh, but take a deep breath. You can do this. We even had to start over once because there was too much noise, and we had to go back and piece things together a little bit at the end. So there's all that, you're out of your flow because you didn't start way back at the beginning. And I had to draw on all of my theatrical experience to get through that. But then at the end, it's this super big high, right? So I can go into that moment and I can think about, because I've seen it enough times and criticized it enough times for from my own side is that I know what my arms are doing physically. I know, how it felt to stand there, but I can physically do that so that then when I get on that call, I'm bringing that confidence with me. So if the, taking off and sway or the sagittal plane isn't your friend, use visualization, but embody it. Put it into your body as well, because that's really going to energize that brain. Uh-oh, am I frozen? Gary's telling me frozen. Yikes. I hope I'm not frozen anymore. Gosh, guys. Well, maybe I was moving too quickly. Well, then we're going to definitely end it here, just in case I'm still frozen. I guess that's technology and the snow outside and everything, and the fact that all of my children are using the Wi-Fi at the same time. All right, we will see you next week. I have a special guest, Kay Coughlin from Facilitator on Fire. She is a dynamo, and we're going to be talking about possibilities. Oh, good, I'm back. So I definitely want to see you here next week I finally will not have to talk by myself for the whole 20 minutes. I will be having a guest, and my first guest is a really dear friend of mine. We lived together in New York City for a little while in a closet. So I'm sure there will be some fun stories that come out, as well as where she is now in her business and the idea of how we can use possibilities to continue this momentum and to grow our businesses in 2021. Have a fantastic day, everybody. If you're like me, we're going to need to get out and go shovel. Take care.